The dangerous torsional elements of the oscillation can further be prevented by suspending the deck from one cable, monocable suspension bridges. That was his idea. In fact, a consortium of European contractors took the design of Leonhard and Krupp and gave the design for the bridge across River Tagus in Lisbon, Portugal. I'll show you, I keep jumping across. The first design of such a completely new type of suspension bridge deck, monocable with inclined suspenders so that he could get the truss reactions also to stabilize it, was made in 1960 for the Tagus Bridge in Lisbon and tendered for by a consortium of European construction firms. But the 1104 meter single span, suspension span bridge was, however, built the usual way using the stiffening trusses. The reason was that the government officers were all having the same old mindset. And I said this morning, don't ever join government service if you want to be an engineer. Don't ever. This is his famous monocable suspension bridge with aerodynamically shaped deck section across Tagus, Lisbon, 1960. You can see the inclined suspenders and monocable. This is the cross section, and you can see at the two ends, the cross section, the wind hits it broadside on. It has got sharp, almost sharp noses that does not let the eddies form. This was the Leonhard Krupp-Lohmer design for the Rhine Bridge in Emmerich in 1961, another similar one. This is the Severn Bridge, Wales. Wales is UK, not England. England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland. These are four different things. Wales' first suspension bridge of the modern type. This was the one built not with monocable, two cables, but no stiffening trusses. And cross-section of the deck of the superstructure had sharp noses to bring the wind and not to let the eddies form. And that's the cross-section. You can begin to see what I was saying. This is the Tagus, which was built the old way, which is this. This is previously there was just only one, Bosporus across Marmaris at Istanbul in Turkey. Now there's another bridge already existing by the side of it, and third one is now under construction. Again, without the stiffening trusses, the new ones. Humber, England, 1410. No stiffening trusses, but you can see the cables. If you can see, can you see them? Not very much, not on this slide. Then this was again a step in the bridge building. As I said, we're talking of history. We're not talking today either of analysis or of design or of detailing or of drawings or of quantities or of costs or of contracts. We're talking of the history, which is this. The famous or the infamous Hyatt Regency walkway collapse in the USA. The Hyatt Regency Hotel walkway collapse was a major disaster that occurred on July 17, 1981 in Kansas City, Missouri, killing 114 people on the very first day, which was the dancing, which was the tea dance. Tea dance was being held, and injuring more than 200 others during a tea dance. That's why it's one of the stepping stones. This is what happened. Then this is the collapse of the Seongsu Bridge, South Korea, October 21, 1994. This is the one. This is the same one. Introspection, and this is important. One wouldn't learn unless one investigated and admitted the failures. There's something which you might know. There's a feeling, a random empirical feeling that every 3 decades, every 30 years there's a major bridge disaster in the world. There were 3 of them, 4 of them that occurred within a span of 5-6 years. The famous King's Bridge collapse, then the Koblenz Bridge in Germany, then Yarra Bridge in Australia, then Milford Haven in Wales. Now these were failures that occurred, but because nobody swept them under the table, people analyzed and learned from them the lessons, which were then made part of the design specifications. Whereas in some countries, I will not name them, you already know which country I'm talking about, because of the elected people and because of the people who might like to hide their ignorance and whatever, they will sweep the whole thing under the table. You will never learn from the accident that was made most innocently, based on many a bridge disaster where there is lateral interference, particularly from particular political entities with their eyes on the elections, and readiness by the owners' engineers to hide their ignorance and incompetence. There is always a way out. All it takes is to constitute a committee of the like-minded and procedurally kill the matter. Never learn from that. A competent engineering analysis from a purely pathological point of view and an uninhibited autopsy of the accident are the only ways to help the understanding rise from the ashes of that particular disaster. And it's because of that, thus the failure of Tacoma Bridge, which I was mentioning just now, did not condemn suspension bridges, but we learned about the aerodynamic instability and how to counter it. Instead, simple aerodynamic stability measures found to beat the bridge flutter problem have paved the way for bigger and more elegant suspension bridges. King's Bridge collapse, I was mentioning to you about, due to brittle fracture. In very cold atmosphere, steel can crack off because of brittleness. King's Bridge failure due to brittle fracture did not mean that the welding of steel box girders was banned. It only outlined the need for the right welding techniques to be made available for the bridges of this sort. And likewise, the series of box girder failures of 1970s could not lead to the conclusion that there was anything fundamentally wrong with the thin plate structures. You see, concrete bridge decks, which are boxes, they do not suffer so much from warping and distortion, but the steel boxes do because they are thin-walled structures. To understand distortion and warping, you have to understand, you have to analyze, you have to use the second-order theory, you have to go back to the basics, you have to go back to the differential equations. If you don't do that, you don't learn from it. The second order, i.e. the buckling analysis of instability of thin plates due to geometric imperfections, only earned the design attention that was previously lacking. So it became a part of the design code. Few, if any, of the failures became inevitable merely through the inexactitude of available methods of computing stresses. You can compute stresses, you cannot measure stresses. It would be an illusion to suppose that greater perfection in such methods and a bigger pile of computer printouts, which I'm afraid today's designers do, of itself will reduce the risk of accident. Just because you have a big pile of computer printout doesn't mean a thing. Sound design is achieved above all by the wisdom and judgment with which the designer applies his results with practice-based intuition, not by mere computation. Great courage and judgment are demanded of the inquirer, as he has a task which requires freedom from bias, while at the same time demanding a definite opinion. Originality comes out of understanding, and understanding comes out of relentless practice, not from mere talking. Good judgment comes out of experience, and experience often comes out of bad judgment. The great Navier. In 1820, he in opting for classical suspension system, he condemned the cable state solution, which is today's rage. But that was the level of understanding of the great mind then. He was a great, great analyst. It remained that way until 118 years later, in 1938, the master analyst, Dishinga, he developed a suspension system which was actually a combination of cable stayed and classical suspension bridge systems. Then started the beginning of cable stayed structures, because somebody like Dishinga came forward and showed us how. Now you can have, basically, if I can touch it again, I'm afraid of your pointer. Initially, no, it won't work, is it? These pointers are all disappointing. Can it? No. Anyway, you can see initially, I mean, this is, I want time, I can't do it in 50 minutes and 1 hour and 2 hours, 4 hours minimum. Because then you will get the taste, the flavor of what I have to talk to you. It's a lifetime thing that I'm talking to you. It is thought that the cable stayed bridges have been built only, began to be built only recently, just 25 years ago, which is nonsense. The first one was done by Riccardo Morandi. I worked under him for 2 years, Jew. difficult to get money from. But if you sat in his presence, he would radiate understanding into your thick head. He was so great, Italian. He is the first one, 1950s, he built the one at top. I'll show you his actual brick, but he was essentially single cable and a thick beam system. Later, people understood they had multi-cables, and obviously the pickup points are so many more, the thickness of the beam system becomes lesser. Then came the multiple. So some is fan-shaped cable system, some will be hard. I'll show you those. This is how the development took place, but he was the first one. In fact, some people dispute that, because Denmark of Sweden also built a similar bridge around that time. This is a cable in harp shape. Some people like it, some don't, but it's much easier to change, if you have to change the suspension system, if you have to replace some of the stays, this is the easier one, not the one which is fan type, because they are so congested at the very top. This is the fan type. No, this is the hybrid, which is a part of cable, part of fan and part of harp, both. So you can change, you can replace the stays as well as still try to retain a little more beauty of the fan system. Then this is the famous Leonhardt's family of unsymmetrical cable stayed bridges, which is beginning with this. You can see that. Some with fan, some with harp, some with hybrid. I'll show you the actual ones. One of the best ones is, it's a very complicated bridge, this one, Breton, over the Seine, near Paris. 143 meters, 320 meters. I mean, the central span is over 1,000 feet. But it looks a beauty. You look at it, you just fall on your knees in silent salutation to somebody's understanding. That is this bridge. This is our own in Calcutta. We took years and decades, and there were discussions, and everybody moving up and down, and everybody claiming, nobody knowing. Ultimately, it was, initially it was designed by Rendell Palmer and Tritton of England. Then somebody raised doubts. It was given to Lua, L-U-A, Leonhardt und Andra, consultants from Germany. They found all the faults, because the Germans and the English, you know that they are the greatest enemies. Then it was given to Lua and checked by the other party. And ultimately it was built. Nothing very great about it. This is the famous lambda-shaped towers of the Rhine family of bridges Flehe by Leonhardt. This is an old one, Coatzacoalcos in Mexico. Very beautiful if you look at it in person at night with the lighting system. The great Professor Leonhardt hypothecated way back in he is no more, he's dead, in his 1972 IABSC paper that for spans of 750 meters to 1500 meters, the cable stayed system was technically and economically superior to the classical suspension system. And you know, if Fritz Leonhardt makes that statement, you just don't question. Especially with regard to aerodynamic stability, but not for railway bridges because of the impact, because of the vibration. This is that Professor Leonhardt. The use of A-form pylons for cable stayed bridges with corresponding inclination of planes of cable, because if it's a single pylon and you have two planes of cable systems to pick up the deck, you have to have even number of, you don't have to have, but this is generally the practice, you have even number of traffic lanes. But if it's an odd number of traffic lanes, there is only one single plane in the center. I'll show you that. This is both sides. This is the center. High cable stresses to ensure favorable stiffness ratios on flat aerodynamically shaped aerofoil deck sections with sharp wind noses are now the order of the day. The great Stussy again remarked in his IABSC Symposium on Concepts of Safety of Structures, London 1969, that the scientific period of design was introduced by Louis Navier way back in 1785-1836. The same old man, Navier, great man, who provided the transition to scientifically based construction with his principal work titled Résumé de l'Écan, 1826, and thereby fundamentally created the applied science of statics. This is too good. I wish more people had come. You won't read this in the books. I'm really not very happy. I wanted to see many more people. And you know, I shouldn't be saying it because this is a place where I belong. Elsewhere I charge 1 lakh for a 2-hour lecture, believe it or not. That might put some sense into those who haven't come. The great Navier gave these lessons. He was a great teacher too. The great Navier gave these lessons on the application of mechanics in the establishment of construction and machines. This is a exact English translation of his French. So I don't want to touch that. I just translated it as is. The great Navier gave these lessons on the application of mechanics in the establishment of construction and of machines. This is translation. He gave this at the Royal School of Bridges and Roads. The French is L'École Royale, whatever. And some of his students were to emerge as eminent groundbreaking engineers in future years. Eminent groundbreaking. After Navier, the development of engineering design was fostered by very many pioneers like those groundbreaking great men, like Carl Kuhlmann, Otto Moore, Friedrich Engesser, to name just a few. And the glorious history of Roman concrete. We graduated from steel, we're now coming towards concrete.